How's everything going? I hope you're all doing well. It's been a while since we did a YouTube live from here with you guys, so I'm so happy to have you all here today. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, hi, I'm Inara. I am the head of educational content, and basically, I run the online courses here at Bamboo U. So it's really nice to have you all here today. And for those of you that have joined before, welcome back. Um, so, for those of you that are joining us live, you can let us know if the chat is working. So, tell us where you're joining from today, what time it is. Over here, it's 10 a.m. in the morning. It's a lovely sunny day. Yeah, let us know where you're joining from. Pop in the chat and say hi. And throughout this session, you can ask us questions in the chat, things like that. So, there's anything, if you want to make a comment, you can go and do that. I see Linda is here. Hi, Linda. Hi, Yuri. So great to have you all here. So there's a couple members from the team as well that are here. So yeah. Oh, hi, Narendra. It's 7:30 in India. Wow, that's dedication. Glad that you can join us. Good morning. All right. So there'll be a couple people that filter through over time. And, again, you can definitely go ahead and send us a message or, ask us questions through the chat. I'll be checking that here. So, first up, before we actually dive into the 3 steps to take before you start a project, I want to know, for those of you that are joining, for those of you that have just joined, tell me in the chat if you have already worked on a bamboo project before, and if so, what it was. And if not, tell me if you would like to work on a bamboo project and what you'd like it to be. So Yuri is saying not yet. Anybody else have any sort of things that they've worked on, maybe not worked on, or they want to create something? Maybe if you want to create something, that's why you're watching this video, hopefully. So let us know, and I'll actually dive right in. So, in the meantime, while things come through in the chat, we'll start with the first step. So, the first step is actually understanding and researching existing bamboo projects. So, before you start designing and getting your ideas out on paper, whether that's by sketching or planning things out, you really want to understand and look at existing bamboo projects. So, by understanding the successful projects that have already been there, you can determine things like what species do I want to use in my particular area? What construction techniques do I want to use? And all this will help you understand what some of the common mistakes are, what species you can use in your area. Like I mentioned, like for example, over here in Indonesia, we have quite a few different species. These are just a couple of them. So there's, for example, Dendrocalamus asper. There's also the black variant, which is Dendrocalamus asper niger, that we use a lot as well because it's really elegant and really beautiful. We also have Gigantocloa apus. This is a great one for small scale structures that we use. And we also have Bambusa blumeana. So this is also another one that we use a lot. Over here in Indonesia, it tends to grow pretty curvy, but in other parts of the world, like in the Philippines, it tends to grow more straight. So they use that more for structural aspects. We use it for more aesthetic things. And depending on where you are in the world, the species that you have may grow a bit differently. So, for example, you might be in India, right? I know a couple of people have just joined from India, so that's great to see. You might use species like Dendrocalamus strictus or Bambusa balcoa instead. So, all those species that you have available in your area, or maybe in regions nearby, you might be in a place where you don't necessarily have all that much bamboo actually growing in the area, but it's not so difficult to procure. And so, based on that, you'll be able to understand okay, these are the species that are available and can be used for a bamboo structure. And you'll be able to see which ones work best for your particular ideas that you have. And besides that, it can also help you understand, doing research can also help you understand different environmental contexts, right? So, okay, for example, I live in Bali, and this is a very tropical, humid climate. So if I want to build here in Bali, I would need to look at projects in places with other similar climates. So that could be places around Indonesia, that could be Thailand, that could even be in places like Brazil, like equatorial Brazil, where the climate is similar. Now, if you live in a place that has a more temperate climate, for example, then you might want to look at places like where they've built in China, for example, or where they've built in northern parts of India, where the climate is very different to what we have over here in Indonesia, right? So, all these things, when it comes to context, is really important to understand because that will help you pick and choose exactly what works for your context in your area. And it's not just necessarily about doing research, let's say, online. So, yes, books, articles, and the internet, they're all really great resources. But if you can, try and do firsthand research as well. And so by this, I mean go and try and actually explore bamboo structures that might be in your region or in your country, at least start there. And then you can expand outwards. Not everyone can come to Indonesia right now at this very moment and actually come look at all the bamboo structures. And I understand that. But try and find things that are available in your area, people that you might see are working with bamboo, things like that. And so you can actually go to these structures that are there that have already been built and you can learn from them. You can see this is what's been working in this particular climate in this region. And you can see, okay, this is actually what's not working because we learn a lot from people's successes, but also from their challenges and their failures. What worked, what didn't work. And one of the best ways to actually go about doing firsthand research is also by tapping into human resources, right? People in the bamboo community are usually quite open and happy to share the information that they have and what they learned. And so by understanding from other people, even by people in our bamboo community, for example, or people that you might find in other bamboo communities online, or even in your region if you're lucky, then you'll be able to learn from them really well. And connecting with other bamboo enthusiasts actually brings you into this large movement of sustainability and building more eco-friendly. And yeah, it's a really great space to be in because everyone is very encouraging. So try to find people that work in a similar context to you, maybe even in your region if you're lucky, and try and tap into them and ask them questions. Ask them, especially if they've built with bamboo before, ask them what worked for them when they were building their structures, what didn't work so well. They might be able to give you specific insights as to, okay, maybe you should try this, or maybe you shouldn't try this particular method or this particular species because it doesn't really work well in our climate. So that's some of the information that you can get from them. Also, another way to engage in bamboo communities is by attending workshops or by attending like large events that are about bamboo. So, one that's coming up actually is in Europe at the moment. So, that's going to be the European Bamboo Expo, and that's going to be happening towards the end of May. And Bamboo U is actually part of that. So, if you go, you might see Orion, our director, actually giving some talks and some panels. So that's one place where you can meet other fellow bamboo enthusiasts. I also know that there is the Bamboost event coming up in the Philippines, in Manila, and that's run by Base Baha'i. And so they actually have a couple of different conferences and events that happen periodically throughout the year. So that's also a really great place to meet people who are interested and have similar values and have similar goals as well to what you might have. And another very important thing is we talked about human resources. Okay, look at people who are working with bamboo right now in your region, in your area. But it's also important to understand the skills and the resources that you have available at that moment in that time. Because bamboo might be very different from what people in your area are used to doing, right? That's the case for me back home in Tanzania. People aren't necessarily used to building with bamboo for construction, and that's okay. But By understanding what local builders and artisans in your area can do, they'll be able to tell you, I don't work with bamboo, but I do work with wood. And so maybe there are some carpentry aspects that can overlap, which is true. We actually had a group of carpenters join us last year from Assam in India, and they were basically they hadn't really worked with bamboo all that much before, but they came and did a workshop with us, and they picked up the skills pretty fast because they were carpenters and they had worked with other materials before. And so then it was just a matter of transferring those skills to another material like bamboo. It wasn't always easy, but it was easier for them to pick up because they already had some other skills available that they could push into different areas. So that's one thing that you might also need to look into. Like, what's kind of available? What are the resources that I have at the moment at home in my area? And the reason that we encourage you to do research is not just necessarily about technical skills. That's one thing, right? So, understanding the technicalities of putting together a project is one thing. Understanding what resources you have available, that's also one thing. But by understanding what people have done and learning from other people and gathering their shared wisdom, they will be able to motivate you and actually encourage you to really push your creativity and try it out for yourself. This is going to be the start of your bamboo journey. And so you really want to be inspired and happy and creative and motivated to actually go and carry out your project. Because otherwise, if you don't have much fuel and much energy to start with at the beginning, then you'll see it drops and drops and drops because challenges will come about during the process and things might not go smoothly all the time. So you really want to start with a lot of motivation and a lot of enthusiasm for your projects. And one way of doing that is, again, by researching and by gathering your inspiration. So that's the first main step. So we see a couple new people in the chat. Hi, guys. We have Matan and we have Budi. I hope you guys are doing well. Tell me if you have any questions, or tell me if you've worked on a bamboo project before, or if you'd like to get started. I see Narendra said that he's planning one. So let me know what you're planning. That would be super cool to hear. It's really cool to see what everyone else is up to in our bamboo community. So yeah, tell us what you've been working on or what you want to work on, and we'll be really excited to hear that. So next up, the next step is actually understanding your project's goals. So, in order to build any successful project, including a bamboo project, you really want to understand what are your goals and what are your objectives for this project. And if you're intentional with these details from the start, then you will have a more meaningful project and it will become more kind of holistic in its specific context. And so, how do we go about this? Well, the first thing that you'll probably want to define is what is the project's function and what is its practicality. So, first, you need to understand okay, this is what I want my project to be about, right? This is what I want my project to be. Actually, I want it to be a school made out of bamboo. I see Yuri said she wants to build a Minang bamboo house. Yeah, so a house versus a school versus there could be other projects, right? So Narendra says a community hall for training and events. Yeah, so there's so many different projects out there. And so by understanding, I see you guys already have that first part down, you understand what the function is. You understand what this project is going to be for. So now you have to go a little bit deeper. There are going to be people using your space, right? So, how can you design and what are your goals to make sure that your project is actually conducive for people in this space? If you are designing a classroom, for example, how is your classroom going to be designed so that the students in it actually are encouraged to learn, it's comfortable for them to learn in, and yeah, it's a space where learning is encouraged as opposed to somewhere where it's kind of closed off and they don't always feel comfortable and you're not feeling all good. That always impacts how you learn, right? So the psychology of space is actually really important because at the end of the day, architecture is for the people, right? It's for the users of that space. If people aren't going to be able to carry out actual functions in that space, then it's probably not a very good project. If you design a house with there are no proper spaces for sleeping, let's say, then it might not be a very successful house, right? So it's just little things that, okay, seem simple, but we want to always try and encourage people to feel like they can actually live in that space or work in that space and behave in that space as they would like to, right? And so you might want to evoke a particular mood in your designs, or you might want to ensure that things are very comfortable for people to be able to carry out different functions. And the thing that people notice in a design is when something doesn't work. So if everything is good in a design and a space is designed well, we don't really pick up on that. But because of the way our brains are wired, we are wired to actually pick up on negative things. That's just how our brains are. And so if something isn't working well, if a space doesn't have a very good function, like let's say you're sitting in your office and the sun from the window is coming straight into your eyes, you're going to realize it. And you're going to realize that, oh, the space is not great for me to work in because the sun is coming into my eyes and I have to work on the screen here, so I'm not able to work. And so you're going to realize that. Whereas if the light is coming at a different angle, let's say, then and you're able to work properly on your screen, then that might be easier for you to work in and you won't even realize that. So try and think about who's going to be using the space and what that actual function is, because that actually makes a big difference. And I'm sure people in the chat will be able to tell me if they've been in a space. It could be a part of their house, it could be a part of, the place where they work or something like that, where they realized they didn't feel comfortable doing, what they were doing, right? So I know for me in the office at a certain point in time, at certain times of the year, the sunlight actually comes and hits me right in the face. And that's not always well designed, right? Because up until a few months ago, there wasn't a shade that actually blocked that sun at certain times of the year. So, yeah, there are things that actually get in the way of us carrying out our day to day activities. And so, let me know in the chat if you've seen or you've experienced this before. You might have been in a space that maybe wasn't very well designed, or maybe they just missed out one thing. It could be just one thing that made your experience in that space a little different. So let me know if that's happened to you. We want to try and avoid that for our bamboo designs because, of course, we're building spaces for people and we want people to be able to comfortably be in that space. So, another component of actually understanding your project's goals and your intentions is to take into consideration the social and cultural impacts of your project. So, we started talking about people and people using our space. But we also want to understand the social and cultural context that you're actually going to build in, right? So, bamboo structures do more than just provide a shelter. They can tell stories, they can showcase local craftsmanship, and actually celebrate community values. And so you can start to consider, how will my design reflect the values or the culture or the traditions of the people? I see Yuri said she wanted to build a Minang bamboo house. And so that's a particular style of building found in Indonesia. And so that would celebrate the local culture, for example. And so bringing in these aspects that connect your project to the wider social and cultural context is very important, because I think we've all seen buildings that are an eyesore. We've all seen spaces in our environment, in our towns, in our cities that we're just like, what? Really? Like, oh no, that's not a nice space. That it doesn't fit in. It doesn't match the different areas. It's not comfortable for people to even look at because it stands out so much that people have a very different reaction to it. And so Mari says there's some space that airspeed is super fast in the office. Yes, yeah, for sure. Yeah. And sometimes like when you have, like, for example, narrow spaces, the air speeds up, and so that actually, yeah, that can make it pretty cold and uncomfortable. So yeah, it can actually impact how you work and stuff. So Didin is asking, for bamboo treatment itself, does it take a long time and procedure? Because we know the problem with natural materials is insects and rot. So I'm actually going to talk about that in the next step. So hang tight for that. But yeah, start to think about the social and cultural context of the buildings that you're in. You might have seen buildings in your area that just stand out a bit too much or don't actually involve the community in that project. You want to build spaces that are for the people, right? And so I know Narendra said that, yeah, want to make a community hall for training and events. That's one really great way of actually bringing in the community and getting your bamboo buildings to celebrate the people that are in it. And of course, you're probably here because you care about the environment, at least a little bit, and that's why you want to start a bamboo project, right? That's one of the main reasons that people get interested in bamboo. It's a really great material to work with because of its environmental impacts. It's relatively low compared to other materials. And you want to start thinking about how your structure is going to impact the environment. And so, unfortunately, the construction industry contributes to more than 40% of worldwide greenhouse gas emissions, which is a lot. It's one of the main emitters of greenhouse gases. And so, how is your building, by using bamboo and let's say other materials, how is that going to actually maximize the resources that you have with minimal impact on the environment? And another component of the environment is also understanding the context. So we spoke a bit about the social and the cultural context, but also you want to think about how your structure interacts with the existing landscape. So are you going to work with natural features like the terrain, the slope, the vegetation in the area, for example? Are you going to look at, are you going to have like natural features actually coming into the building? So you might have some vegetation. You might actually take advantage of different views that you have around you. You might have a very beautiful site, so you might be able to do that, but you might not. So you might want to keep that more focused inwards, but you want to think about how it actually, how your project fits in the terrain and the geography of that area. So that's another component of the environment and context. And Narendra says, yeah, environment, economy, entrepreneurship. Yeah, those are three key areas of defining your project's goals, because we want our bamboo projects to be sustainable, not just in one way, not just for the environment, but for the social and cultural and economic parts of all that. So yeah, balance. Balance is very important. Alrighty. So the next step, which is kind of, it seems straightforward, but sometimes it's overlooked, is sourcing the right bamboo. And this is where I'm actually going to tackle Didin's question very soon. So basically, you need to source the right bamboo for your project. That seems quite obvious, right? And one thing that we need to actually look at is that not all the bamboo species that we have in the world, there's 1,600 of them, they don't all grow the same. And not all of them are good for construction. And you really want bamboo that works well in your climate, but also ones that you have as close to you as possible so you minimize on bringing in, let's, let's say, large shipments of bamboo to as much as you can, right? So you might live in a place where you don't really get all that much bamboo, and that's okay. Bringing it in is not always a bad thing. Um, Actually, because of the climatic impact of bamboo and how much CO2 it actually absorbs, this might even be canceled out with your shipments and actually bringing that in. So depends on where you are in the world, depends on where you're bringing the bamboo from. But yeah, it might not actually have that much of an impact. It might actually cancel each other out. So when you're looking at the species, there's different things to consider, right? So species vary in strength and flexibility and resistance to the environmental conditions. And some varieties, like over here we use Dendrocalamus asper, for example, for the structure. which you can actually see in that corner over there. That's one of, this is the same bamboo that we use for constructing this building. And that works really well in this particular area. It grows well in Indonesia, and we have an abundance of it within Bali itself. And so we're able to use this material very well. It's a very straight growing bamboo, and it's pretty large, it's quite chunky. And so that's what one of the things that actually makes it really good for construction, right? Some varieties are good for construction. Some might not necessarily be great for the structural members. So, like I mentioned earlier, this particular species, which is found in the Philippines, it's called Bambusa blumiana. In Indonesia, it grows kind of curvy and not straight. In the Philippines, it grows really well. It grows quite straight, and they're very good at managing their clumps of Bambusa blumiana. But in Indonesia, because it's a bit thorny, it can get a bit difficult. And so this bamboo actually grows a bit curvy and wavy. And so we tend to use this for more aesthetic elements or for more decorative things as well. We do sometimes use it for structures, but not always. And so understanding the best types of bamboo for your project will depend on the project's structural needs and how well they grow in your climate. And so even if you don't have bamboo in your area, you'll want to research which varieties you can bring into your locale, and what their qualities are. Are they good for building a structure like the one you have in mind? Maybe, maybe not. And so you want to try and look into that. And besides just sourcing bamboo, the next thing within that is actually sourcing high quality bamboo. And this is just as important as choosing the right species, because you might actually go and find some bamboo that works. It might be Dendrocalamus asper bamboo, for example, that works really well, but it might not be actually, good, because it might have been attacked by insects. It might be buckling. It might have gotten squashed in the transportation process to you. It might have been harvested too early, which is now making it crack. So you have to ensure that the bamboo that you're getting is harvested sustainably and well treated, and also harvested at a good age, because we just actually posted about this on Instagram, that the bamboo that sometimes gets procured is not always high quality. And so there are some checks that you can do to make sure that the bamboo that you have is mature. And by that, I mean it should be at least 3 to 4 years of age before you actually harvest it and then use it for construction specifically. Because if the bamboo is not completely lignified on the inside, it's not rigid enough to actually build with, and that can compromise your structures because it can lead to cracks and damage. So that's something you really want to check for. When you bring in your bamboo, whether it's you harvesting it and treating it on your own, or whether you're actually procuring it from somebody else, then you want to check for things like cracks and buckling, insect damage, or any inconsistencies that could compromise its strength. So you want to work with knowledgeable suppliers and procurers, and also conduct your own checks. Once you actually get the bamboo, check to make sure that everything is okay. And what we often do is we actually recommend that you purchase, let's say, 10% more of the bamboo that you might need for a structure, because you might realize that, oh no, like some of my bamboo cracked on the way to get to my site, for example. That's one of the ways that we mitigate these sort of issues. And to maximize the lifespan of your bamboo, I mentioned this just briefly, is you need to make sure that your bamboo is treated. And there's so many ways to treat bamboo. Over here in Indonesia, we use borax and boric acid, but in your region, this may not always be accessible. So we've also heard of people using things like permethrin and selenium to treat their bamboo. I know that permethrin is used, for example, in the Philippines. Selenium is used as well in other parts of the world, like in East Africa. So, it really depends on what you have available. And so Lidin is asking, for bamboo treatment itself, how long does it take and what's the procedure? So it really depends on the treatment type that you use. For our borax and boric acid solution, we use an immersion method where we take the bamboo, We puncture the inside to make sure that all the solution actually gets into the inside. And so you can get that, like all that solution to go right through the middle where the sugary and starchy tissues are. And so once that's in there, we put it in a pool of the solution and we keep it down. And so that can take, if it's a cold immersion, that can take anywhere between 7 to 14 days. Now, we also have at this factory, we also have a hot immersion method, which is the same solution, borax and boric acid, but it's heated a little bit up to about 45 to 60 degrees. And then it's kept for, let's say, 6 to 8 hours. Once that's done, it's left to cool, and then you can pull it out. So within one full day, you have bamboo that's ready to dry. And actually, once it's dried, which takes a couple of weeks, even sometimes 2 or 3 weeks, if not more, depending on the bamboo. If it's a thick bamboo like this one, like Bambusa blumiana, it can actually take a while to dry. So it really depends on the species and how long your treatment process takes before you can actually work with it. Usually, a lot of the methods will take, if it's a cold immersion method, that can take up to 2 weeks. So that's just something to keep in mind. And you might use other methods like a pressure method or a modified boucherie method, which uses a pressure pump on one side and it pushes the solution through. That's a lot faster. But when it comes to working with pressure, you really need to know what you're doing in order to be able to work with it. So if you don't know what you're doing, your bamboo can explode, and that's very dangerous. And we don't want all that happening. So be careful with whatever treatment that you use. Treatment solution is also important because there are parts of the world which use solutions that are, for example, like copper, chromium, arsenic. And we recommend not using these kinds of substances just because they are not only harmful to the environment, like when you pour out the solution once you're ready, if you're not going to use it again, if you pour it out, that harms the environment. But also, it's very kind of, it's worrying for the people that actually work with it. So if you're working with that, I mean, think about the people that are working with it, or once it's dry, the people that will come in contact with it while building, or even the users of your structure. That's all stuff to take into consideration. So borax and boric acid is typically our main way to go. And we use the immersion method here. And whatever option you do choose, proper preservation will enhance the longevity of your structure big time. And that can be, for example, untreated bamboo might last maybe 1 or 2 years in a structure because by then you might have bugs and stuff crawling in your structure and eating the sugary insides of your bamboo. But if your bamboo is well treated, then your structure can last, let's say, 20, 30 years, even more. So it really depends. And I do see we have a couple more comments and questions. So for the technical work in terms of structural calculations, is there a coefficient for calculating the strength of the bamboo material itself, especially if we use SAP software? That's a really good question. Okay, so I'm not an engineer, I'll be honest, I'm an architect, and so I don't know as much about that. But what I do know is there are different ways to calculate, there are different calculations that you can do. And I'll give you a quick thing right now. We're actually working on an engineering course with the Base Baha'i Foundation, which will be launched later this year. And that's going to be an online course, and that's going to be available for you guys. So stay tuned for that. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about that yet, but yeah, it's in the process, and we're actually working on creating the content right now. So it's a very, very exciting time. But what has been realized with the research is that large diameter bamboos, the larger the diameter, the stronger it actually is. So it doesn't actually matter about the wall thickness. It's actually the diameter that actually makes a big difference in the strength of the bamboo. And SAP will help you do some calculations in order to understand how the structure works, and how, like, where the loads are placed and how to calculate and actually design your structure better for these particular loads. So that's just something to keep in mind. Like, SAP was very useful for actually identifying kind of where the loads are, where you might need to add more supports, things like that. Yuri says, how do we get bamboo as young plants? So seedlings, you might look for seedlings, for example, in like there might be bamboo already growing around you, so you might take a cutting. And so that's one way to do it. I think that's what you mean. Or do you mean how do you check if your bamboo is young? Just let me know what you mean by that. And someone says, love this channel, just found you guys and have been binge watching. That's great. I'm really happy that you like it. So if you guys have any questions so far, again, the chat is there. You can drop them in. Any questions about what we've talked about so far? And because we've just gone through essentially the three steps that you need to take before you actually start designing, right? So you need to research other build projects that are around. Maybe in your region, maybe in similar regions, similar contexts to yours. Then the second step is defining your goals and your intentions. And the third one is using the right bamboo. So how are you actually, going about that for your projects as well, right? How are you going to source the bamboo for your project? So someone's asking, I need seeds for Dendrocalamus asper and Bambusa nigra. Okay, so we don't actually have seeds, and we actually recommend that you don't use seeds because it's a very, very difficult way of actually planting bamboo. If you can find someone in your region that has seedlings, so bamboo that's already started to grow, or they can give you a cutting, that might be easier because that way it grows a lot better. Seeds are often very difficult to work with for bamboo specifically, but there are other methods for planting bamboo that work better. So yeah, try and find either seedlings or cuttings, or if you can, tissue culture is also very effective. Those will be better than finding seeds because seeds, honestly, their rate of actually growing is very, very low, unfortunately. And a lot of times you get fake seeds, so it's very hard to tell which ones are real and which ones work. So yeah, that's just something to keep in mind. But now, what if you're ready to take the next step? I know a couple people are here because they're thinking, okay, yeah, I want to know the first steps, but what else? How do we move forward from that? So then it's time to design. And as you may know, I manage the online courses that we have here at Bamboo U, and we've just actually revamped our online course, and it's called The Principles of Bamboo Design. And this was actually the course that I took to actually start my bamboo journey. I started my bamboo journey in 2022 by taking Bamboo U's online course. And that's how it started. And that was my gateway into the bamboo world, into the bamboo design world in particular. And now I'm here at Bamboo U. So, yeah. So, this particular course that we've now put together is actually a 4-week long course about designing with bamboo. And it starts on the 5th of May. And we cover the following topics. So, I'll just read them off from my notes. And so, the first one is bamboo as a material. Then we look at bamboo design and construction process. Then we look at the design pillars from Ibuku's ethos. So in this particular module, we actually have Elora Hardy, who is the creative director at the Ibuku studio. So a lot of the bamboo buildings that you see in Indonesia, especially the first, like the earlier ones, they were all designed by her firm. And she walks us through how that actually works. So how they go about designing at Ibuku to design spaces that are conducive, but also are really beautiful and aesthetically pleasing and just wonderful to be in. So that's the third module. Then we look at transforming your concept in 3 dimensions. So how you start to bring your designs to life. And then we look at bamboo design in urban contexts. And so your facilitators would be Orin, the director of Bamboo U, Elora, who is the director of Ibuku, Luis, who is our general manager, project architect, and structural engineer here at Bamboo U, Mike, who is also a project architect at Bamboo U, and myself. And so we do get a lot of questions about the online course, especially Because I mean, it is an online format, right? And we want to learn about things that are more hands on. And so, how does that actually work? Well, throughout these topics that we go through, you actually work on developing a project with the help of the facilitators. So, the facilitators that I just mentioned, so for example, Luis and Mike, actually help give you feedback on a project that we will design together. So, you can choose any project that you like. Let's say, for example, I know some people were thinking about projects that they had in mind already. And so, for that, if you have a project in mind, especially, that's a really great place to start. Or maybe you're just interested in learning about designing with bamboo. That's also a great place to start. By having a project or something that you might like to design or something like that, this is actually your way in. So you will get feedback on your bamboo project from the facilitators as we help you develop it. And so that's everything from the sketches to the actual models that you'll build. And people are probably thinking, okay, I'm not an architect or a designer, but can I still take this course? Yes, definitely. We actually start this course out with just from the basics, right from the beginning. You don't need any other sort of information from before. If you've just started this, then yeah, if you just want to start your bamboo journey, this can be your gateway in. I know it was for me, right? So you don't need to have any experience in design or any background in anything specific. You can actually go in and start to work with the content that we give you and with the assignments to actually start designing with bamboo. And essentially, like I mentioned, there are no prerequisites or technical requirements. The only thing that you might need is a laptop or a phone where you can watch the content for the videos and a reliable internet connection. So probably if you're here watching this video, you can probably see that, that's already there. And we do have live sessions as well that are recorded that you can watch, taking the course and stuff as well. And so we'll have a Q&A session, for example, where you can ask us questions about the content. We will have critique sessions where we give you feedback on your work. And we'll have a session with Elora, who is the director at the Ibuku Design Studio. So those are some of the ways that you will get all that information and start to learn about how we can actually put bamboo design into practice. And we also, you might know, we offer in-person courses here in Bali. So how does this differ from that? Because we get that question a lot. And so these two courses actually complement each other. We have the hands-on kind of practical learning aspect in the offline courses. And then we have like the deep dive into the different processes we use and understanding how they can be adapted into your own sort of context. And so that's what you get from the online course. And through that online course, like I mentioned, you have that opportunity to develop that bamboo project in your own context with the feedback from us. And the knowledge is also packaged into modules that are really easy to digest. So it's not too overwhelming. It's spread out over 4 weeks. And the in person course is more about that hands on experience. So the cool thing with the online course is that you can always go back to it and go through the content. And then for the offline course, it's more that kind of actually kind of building that actual physical thing. Whereas in the online course, you suit this information to your own context, which is probably quite important if you do want to build somewhere in your part of the world, especially if it's not Indonesia, right? So that's one of the questions that we get. And another one that we get is how much time will I have to put into it? So it's not actually all that much. You can take about 1 hour a week for the video content. And then let's say another hour if there's a live session, which will of course be recorded in case it doesn't match your time zone. And then for the assignments that you have, it might take a bit longer. So maybe 3 or 4 more hours to work on those. And if you need any tools or materials, we actually have a list of materials that you might want. These are basically craft materials. And the first thing on that list is bamboo sticks. And so you might be in a place where it's very difficult to find bamboo model making sticks, and that's okay. what I used when I took this course was I bought the bamboo skewers from the grocery store, and those work just as well. Those are actually pretty useful for creating bamboo models. So you have that option as well. It's a lot of different materials that you can just get from nearby, like glue or, a cutter or those simple bamboo model making sticks or bamboo skewers that you can to put your models together. Otherwise, you don't really need much besides that. And so it starts on the 5th of May, and I'll actually drop in the link into this chat, but it's also in the description of this video as to where you can actually enroll and actually learn a bit more. But if you have questions, I will take them now. So Didin is asking, for the post-construction period, what is the best method for fire protection? Because dry bamboo is very vulnerable, especially with the presence of electrical installations passing through. We actually have a article on our bamboo blog about this. You're right, bamboo is a grass, and its hollow nature makes it very prone to fire. So there are a couple of considerations that you can take, but honestly, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to actually protect your entire structure from fire, and that's one of the reasons why Inbar and the people that have made the bamboo engineering codes, things like that, that's why they recommend that your structures stay less than 2 stories. And this is just like the general standards, right, of bamboo construction that were made. They recommend that your bamboo structure is no more than 2 stories. Now, that's not always a requirement. That's not always possible, right? You might need a space that's 3 floors, 4 floors more. So it's actually very tricky. That's the one thing when it comes to bamboo that people have a lot of questions about. And if you want, I'll send you the link to our blog, and you can find the article about fire protection there, which goes into a bit more detail. But you're right, it is very tricky. It's a very tricky kind of aspect to work with for bamboo. So I'll just find that in a second. And we have another question. How do you maintain complex bamboo structures? In a worst case scenario that you need to replace parts of the structure, do bamboo structures present difficulties when repairing? So it depends. If you maintain your structure, so the thing is, when it comes to bamboo, just like any other building, you need to actually have a proper maintenance schedule. And that means checking your bamboo structure every 5 to 7 years to make sure things are going okay. But yeah, what do you do if you find a crack? Well, it's not actually too difficult, because a lot of the times we do recommend sometimes slightly over engineering your structures so that when you need to go back and actually change, let's say, a whole pole because of insect damage or because of cracks, or things happen, right? It does happen that sometimes we do need to change these things. That's okay. So in that case, what you would need to do is you would need to actually add like some scaffolding and support your building a little bit more on the sides, and then replace that particular element, if it's a structural element. If it's something that's more decorative, things like that, that's a lot easier to replace, but it's not actually as difficult as you might expect. Bamboo buildings are generally quite lightweight overall, and so they're not too difficult to work with when it comes to the structure. But yeah, it is possible, and we have done it in the past. It just takes a bit more planning and logistics to actually work on kind of supporting that building in the meantime while you are replacing a structural element. Which is why we really do recommend that you ensure that your bamboo is really well treated beforehand, and ensure that you design it properly to avoid these kinds of issues like rotting, and keeping essentially things like the water away from your building, keeping direct sunlight kind of away, or protecting your structural elements in a way that things like water damage and sun damage do not pose threats to your building. So do we have Any other questions? I've just sent the link to the fire one as well. But if you just type in bamboo U fire protection, you'll find that article on Google as well, in case this link is a bit iffy. So, yeah, any other questions that we have? I see a couple people are already registered for our course. If anyone has questions about the course or about anything else, we can take those. But I don't think there are any. So, in that case, thank you all for joining today. It's been a pleasure having you here, and we're so glad that you could come live as well. And for those of you that are watching this recording, we're happy to have you as well. If you have any questions or comments, things like that, you can leave them within YouTube and we'll come back to you. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.